welcome back to Beating a Dead Horse. As always, I'm your host, Sean McKinda, and I'm mad this week.
And I'm your host, Jackson Keller. I am also quite irate.
And that means it's gonna be an interesting week. We haven't had a good episode where the both of us are just mad at having watched a movie in a long fucking time. So I'm pretty happy that we're able to just come right out of the gate here. We're not gonna lie. We're not gonna pretend that like, oh no, there's like some redeeming qualities to Cowboys and Aliens. I mean, there kind of is. It's fine, but it's also just fine.
My hot take is that this is a strong contender for possibly my least favorite thing we've ever talked about on the show.
You're welcome.
And I mean, to give you some context, compared to the other contenders, which I would say are Hurricane Heist, Star Wars Holiday Special, Lion King 2019, and Postal.
Okay, so that's actually about a fair split. I was kind of going down the list of like which one of those are my choice and which one of those are your choice and which one of those are just like a thing that we did. And like this and Hurricane Heist are definitely my stuff. Lion King was definitely something that would be more on your your thing. The Holiday Special is definitely a neutral one. As is Postal.
Yes.
Well, we can blame Tom for Postal. You know what you did.
Because like I was thinking about it, and like, you know, Postal, it's the classic question of like, you know, what's worse, something that's like offensively bad versus something that's like boringly bad. I think after watching Cowboys and Aliens, I am firmly on the boringly bad is worse. At least Postal like made me consider like a period in time and like, you know, what led someone to making like such a disaster. Postal was fucking horrible, but I feel like my brain was stimulated a little bit, like thinking about its cultural context. Cowboys and Aliens is a movie that's in the dustbin of history already, and it's where it belongs. I can't believe we've dredged this up.
We are talking about Cowboys and Aliens this week. I dredged this one out of the annals of my mind palace, and I deeply regret it. I saw this way back when it came out in theaters, and it turns out that Sam and a bunch of her friends saw it in theaters as well. And when she told me this, I'm like, oh my God, that's 4 people that have seen this movie in the entire world. I think that's it. That's all of us. That's 4. So that's everyone who's ever seen this movie. Everyone else who's listening, welcome. I'm sure you have no idea what Cowboys and Aliens is. Well, actually, you know exactly what Cowboys and Aliens is. It's a movie that came out in 2011 called Cowboys and Aliens. That's everything that you need to know about it. It stars Daniel Craig, Sam Rockwell, Harrison Ford, Olivia Wilde, and honestly, there you go. Cowboys and Aliens. It's a Western movie where aliens show up. And Cowboys and Aliens. Cowboys and Aliens?
This feels like a fake movie. Like, this honestly is like Future World tier to me. Like, like, no, I'm serious. It has a lot in common with Future World. It's just like a cookie cutter, like nothing premise with bizarrely like big names involved. Except this got an actual wide release. It just bombed spectacularly because it's so fucking thuddingly dull. Like, Lion King 2019 has the distinction of being the only movie on the show that I've walked out of. I functionally checked out of this one at the halfway point. I got bored. I was like, surely we have to be close to being done with this, right? I'm so bored. I can feel myself age watching this. I paused it. There was still an hour to go. And I'm like, okay, I'll keep it out of the background. But it's phone time, baby. We're going to who would win. We're going to argue about whether Thanos would beat Goku in a fight because that is more intellectually stimulating than Cowboys and Aliens.
Okay, I recommended this, and this is going to say a lot about. I have constantly espoused how stupid I was when it came to movies and media back in my high school and early college days, and this is just gonna drive that nail right into that coffin because I liked this movie when it came out, is the thing. I liked this movie, and I would like to go back to that time and kick myself in the dick for even having that thought.
See, that's funny because from like a teenage boy perspective, I actually don't blame you. Like, it's not like a Transformers movie where it's so obviously terrible, right? But like, it has a lot in common with that era of blockbuster. Like, I feel like if my friends, because that was the meme, is that back in the day, my friends and I were like, oh, Cowboys and Aliens starring Daniel Craig and Harrison Ford. That's wacky. Let's go see it. We never did. It would have been more interesting if we never did. Now I know that it's Cowboys and Aliens.
Well, see, I want to go back mostly because if I never would have had the thought of, oh, I kind of liked it, it never would have stuck in my brain, and we never would have rewatched it.
It would have stayed forgotten where it belonged. That's true.
I think that's the bigger sin, is that we have dug up Cowboys and Aliens again 14 years after it came out. I'm sorry, 9 years after it came out to talk about it.
I mean, I said it in the pre-discussion, and I'll say it again here. This movie feels like it was made by an algorithm. Like, it's actually unbelievable how, like, the script, and I knew it was such a bad sign. Like, the biggest red flag for me was in the opening credits when I saw that there were, like, 10 different people credited across the story and the screenplay. That's how you know you're in fucking trouble.
It's never good when you, like... When you have 2 or 3 writers, yeah, I mean, that's, a niche group of people who are working together, closely knit, very much trying to bring their artistry together. If it's a single person, it's kind of like a coin flip there, They might be like a really talented writer bringing out something interesting and fascinating, or they might bring out The Room. When you have 10 writers, it's probably going to be the most forgettable piece of shit movie you have ever watched, because it is just, we made a computer watch 1,000 hours of cowboy movies and alien movies, and this is the script that it pumped out.
I actually am going to give the audience a little tidbit here that you may not know. So if in the story credits, I might be mixing up the order, but the whether they use when there's multiple writers, whether they use an ampersand or an and is actually incredibly vital into knowing what movie you're about to watch. Because I believe an ampersand, like John Wayne and Clint Eastwood wrote this movie, whatever. If they have an ampersand between their names, that means that John Wayne and Clint Eastwood worked together to write this movie. If they use the word and, again, I might be mixing it up, it's one or the other, that means that one person was writing it, elements of that script still remain, and they pass it off to someone else for one reason or another. The writer gave up, thought it was shit, they couldn't get it to work, they hired someone else, they did reshoots, etc., etc., etc. Cowboys and Aliens has both.
I'm looking at the IMDb right now. It's ampersand, ampersand, and ampersand, nothing, ampersand, and another name. There are 8 names on this list, and one of them just dead ends before listing an additional 3.
I mean, it's incredible. Like, this is like it's so funny.
Damon Lindelof wrote the screenplay?
He was one of the people on the screenplay.
Okay, yes, okay, right. Splitting hairs important though. Like you're right there, but I'm sorry, Damon Lindelof was on this? Holy shit. Damon Lindelof, for those who don't know, is the writer on both Lost and the new Watchmen series on HBO. Take from that what you will.
David Lindelof has an interesting career. A much less interesting career is Orci and Kurtzman, famed duo behind the malign Star Trek reboot and The Amazing Spider-Man, among other things. I believe some of the Transformers movies, but I could be wrong about that. They're here on this. That was also a big red flag about this movie. And it was absolutely right. It's like every single word. Like, do you remember when we watched X-Men Apocalypse? And, like, there was that one scene where Apocalypse said, like, it's over. No. And, like, both of us, like, in unison, we're like, it's only just begun. Like excitedly, like, finishing the script for the movie.
Oh, my God. X-Men Apocalypse was one of my all-time favorite movie theater experiences, because that moment right there of that, it's only just begun, we saw that with both Sam as well as our old roommate, and the three of you, after we had that moment, checked out of the movie, you realize that it was absolute trash. I spent the rest of the movie just like, I know it's coming. I know the line. I know the cliche. I know where it's going. Just having the time of my life predicting every line as it was happening. And I was like 90% accurate through that movie. And it was incredible.
I feel like I didn't appreciate Apocalypse while I had it, now that I've seen this absolute fucking trash fire. Because Apocalypse at least has Professor X, like, you know, standing up and dragging Apocalypse to his mind palace and going, "You're in my house now," and like sucker punching.
Oh my God, I forgot about that.
Like, it's got, and that's the thing, is that like Hurricane Heist, right? Like, the main character's brother in Hurricane Heist is named Breeze. I just want to remind everyone of that. Like, that right there makes Hurricane Heist more intellectually stimulating than Cowboys and Aliens. I actually had a similar experience to you, your Apocalypse experience with Cowboys and Aliens, except it was like I was doing that throughout the movie. I was just like, you know, calling everything, like, you know, every time Daniel Craig had his stupid fucking, like, you know, amnesia like plot line pop up, and every time he said like, I don't know, I can't remember, and I was calling the movie, and then when it got to the point where I could tolerate it no longer and started like looking at my phone, I'd occasionally look up, get the gist what was going on, and say, oh, they're doing this now. They're doing this for this theme. They're going to bring it back later in this way. Harrison Ford's going to realize what a big naughty racist he was. He's going to reconnect with his adopted, you know, Native American son, and, you know, they're going to have a big old stupid moment, and that's what's happening. And then I look back down at my phone, and like half an hour later I look back up, and that exact thing happens with the exact like dialogue, and I'm like, I can't I wish I had just like committed to the bit and turned it off and played more Super Mario Odyssey, because I could have faked my way through it. I could have like pretended like I watched the whole thing, because it was so fucking predictable.
I think the best thing that you should have done in hindsight is you should have turned it off and then not told me that you turned it off. And then like at the end of the episode been like, so I actually didn't watch the back half of this movie, and just like see how much of it, like how much I would have believed you.
I was really, really considering it. I'm still in jail for Silent Hill 2, though, so I decided against it.
I was sick.
Yeah, Cowboys and Aliens. I mean, we could get into why, but this movie is fucking terrible, and not fucking terrible in a way that is at all interesting. Like,
no, I mentioned in the opening, like I said that, you know, it's irredeemable, but it's not irredeemable. And I think that's almost the problem with the movie, in that it is so serviceable. It doesn't do anything particularly well or particularly poorly. Native American representation is not great. I will give it that.
Even that's not great in a way that's so like childishly simple. Like, it's not great in a way that is so clearly part of like the algorithm feeding it out. Like, racism bad, but we're still gonna have all these stupid fucking stereotypes in the movie.
Yeah, and like they're not even like interesting to talk about stereotypes.
No!
Like, we've had things where we've talked about like these stereotypes and been like, this is the problem with this, like this is what it represents. Go listen to our fucking Audrey 2 episode, Little Shop of Horrors, where we talked a lot about stereotypes and how it, you know, led to readings of the movie and how it, you know, fed into white flight and everything. It's absolutely, I think, a fascinating episode. This episode is just like, they come out doing exactly what you expect Native Americans to be doing in a bad movie, and it's bad. I mean, that's really all it boils down to. The more harmful stuff is stuff that I'm going to talk about once we get into spoilers, because I'm actively mad about multiple parts of this movie, mostly in how the algorithm spits out things that clearly show that it doesn't understand any of it upon any, like, you get past that first layer of skin, like, you know, you got like 7 layers of skin or whatever, and they're super thin. Like, you get past that first layer and you're like, okay, the movie falls apart instantly. It's done.
The only thing I was super angry with the movie about was wasting my fucking time.
Understandable.
But that's mostly because I was checked out. Like, it's the thing about this movie is that, like, it didn't have to be this way. It didn't have to be this way. And my greatest fear going into it was I was thinking a lot about Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter, which is a bonus episode that we did. So our patrons know all about this. But Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter is a very similar movie insofar as it's a movie with a stupid premise and a stupid title that they play it completely straight. But like Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter, they don't play it so straight that it comes around to being funny. They don't play it so straight that like it comes around to being actually good. They don't camp it up. They don't meme it up. They play it straight enough that it's boring and somehow sucks all the joy out of what should be a fun, wacky premise. Except this is somehow worse than Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter because at least in that movie he throws a horse at somebody. And like this is the epitome of that era of like dull, incomprehensibly written, cookie cutter, like Sound and Fury, Transformers blockbusters. Like this is like I shit a lot on Disney and their like movies recently, like and not not undeservedly so, but like
Chill. You're owned by Disney.
But fuck me, dude. I'd even take like Lion King 2019 over this. Like at least that has the bones of like a good story. It's still the fucking Lion King. Like at least with modern Disney, they know that you have to have like some sort of character or some sort of joy. Like this is all just as soon as the aliens show up, it's over. It's the most boring cookie cutter version of this thing that you could possibly imagine. They take Cowboys and Aliens and make it dull.
And we'll talk about the little bit before the aliens show up because there almost was something here. There was almost a movie here, and then the aliens showed up, and I felt my eyes glaze over. It is incredible how with every plot beat in this movie, I got more annoyed with it. It is incredible. But I do want to say this. You're comparing it to Transformers. And that's unfair to Transformers, I think.
No, it really is. It really is.
Let me clarify though. That's unfair to Transformers like 1 and 2. Comparing it to like Age of Extinction, fair, hard fair, y'all. That movie eats ass. But like 1 and 2, there's some heart to it. Like there's some fun. There's some moments to it. You remember bits from 1 and 2, but like. Yeah, no, this is Cowboys and Aliens is worse than Transformers 1 and 2.
Cowboys and Aliens, I think it's worse than Age of Extinction. Again, like at least in Age of Extinction, like Mark Wahlberg has a truly bizarre, horrible like product placement scene where he flexes on a guy by drinking a Bud Light in the street. Transformers Age of Extinction at least has a scene where Mark Wahlberg dispatches an enemy with a football. Like this has nothing. This has less than nothing. This the first 10 minutes set up a potentially like interesting movie, but I can't give it credit because it like pisses it away so fast.
You know, it's funny because you're absolutely right. Like I'm thinking about what I remembered about Cowboys and Aliens before we watched it this time, and I remember absolutely nothing about, like, before we watched it, I don't remember a thing about this movie, and as we are recording it, aside from some broad strokes feelings about this movie, I'm already forgetting most of it. Most of it's already gone. I remember the first 10 minutes because, as you said, the first 10 minutes are a really good Western premise setup. Man shows up with amnesia, goes to town, tries to figure out who he is. That shit's great. It's honestly setting up a really interesting movie. And I'm like, okay, I'm settling in to watch this great Western movie. Let's fucking go. I'm on board. And then the aliens show up and I go, well, never mind. I'm going to go get a drink or some shit because I don't want to watch this anymore. Because the aliens themselves are so boring. Like, that's the thing too, is that like when you see these aliens show up, it's not interesting. It doesn't be like, oh shit, that's a really good design and I'm fucking into it. No, it's like, oh hey, look, it's the alien from District 9 mixed with the alien from Independence Day mixed with the alien from Starship Troopers, and it's boring as sin. The ships look completely uninspired. They're just the proto ships for the Avengers movies, and
it's that dull early 2000s gray, like completely drab, completely free of any personality. Like,
and there's arms that are ripped straight out of the Tom Cruise War of the Worlds movie. Like I remember those arms from War of the Worlds. Didn't remember that they were in this because they're the same thing except worse.
War of the Worlds, the Tom Cruise War of the Worlds, is actually an extremely memorable movie. I've only seen it once when it was in theater, so I was pretty young. But like with the
same though,
with the visuals and like, you know, the tone and like, you know, the genuine like terror in that movie, like that's a great alien invasion movie, or at least like, I mean, at least memorable enough for me to remember it like, you know, a decade plus on.
People are singing its praises more and more. I think it's kind of coming back around into the popular vogue.
Yeah, I know, because I know it was maligned for a while there, but like I think people who kind of grew up with it or kind of reevaluating it. But like I was actually thinking about it, and that like this movie made me like sit back, like seeing just how fucking terrible the sci-fi elements were in this. And this movie genuinely made me question if I just hated all alien invasion movies the way that I hated Chappie. Like that's how fucking boring this movie is. And then like not only like it's funny because I was thinking about War of the Worlds. I'm like, no, like War of the Worlds shows that you still can do like a genuinely frightening, like genuinely visually interesting, like alien invasion movie. Like Independence Day is good, campy fun. But then I was thinking about it, I'm like, wait, well, hold on. What do you mean I don't like alien invasion movies? Dragon Ball Z is an alien invasion story, and that's my fucking favorite thing of all time. Like, Cowboys and Aliens is so boring. It makes me hate the things that I love.
Cowboys and Aliens is gaslighting you into thinking you hate things.
It really is.
Oh, boy, howdy. Do we want to get into spoilers now so I can tear this movie a new one on so many levels?
Go off, King. I was debating whether or not I should even call spoilers on this one because I feel like that's encouraging people to watch it. Please do not. Just keep listening and listen to us give this movie a thorough paddling and then move on with your life.
Yeah, we dredged this one up for us. No one else should dredge this movie up. It is remarkably boring. You know what? Let me put it this way, actually. If you are fucking bored out of your mind and you're like, I need something that will not entertain me and not provide any sort of intellectual stimulation, but I want something on in the background while I organize my closet, put on Cowboys and Aliens. If you're doing anything else, watch something different.
Sean, I can't get behind you on this one. This movie was so dull, I can't even recommend it for that. I actually want to purposefully distance myself here because I genuinely think it should be a crime to subject anyone to Cowboys and Aliens because those are precious minutes of their lives that they're never going to get back. You're basically killing them.
That's fair. You know what? I retract my statement. Strike it from the record. Let it be known that you should not watch this movie under the Torture and Seditions Act. Well, I mean, I guess, if nothing else, I'm going to use this moment to talk about the fact that we have a Patreon, patreon.com/BADHcast, Twitter, twitter.com/BADH_cast. And next week, we're going to be talking about Uncut Gems, a movie I saw in theaters last year. Absolutely loved. I loved it quite a bit. And Jackson hasn't seen it, and he's like, hey, we should watch it because you've said good things about it. So let's do it. And so we're going to watch Uncut Gems next week. And I'm really excited to revisit it and remember the fact that Adam Sandler's actually a good actor when he wants to be, which is a weird sentence.
I'm real excited for this because it's been on my backlog. Several people have sang its praises to me, and I really wanted to see it when it was out in theaters. Because it was out around the same time as Parasite, I think, and like both movies I wanted to go see. Both of them were only playing in Cleveland, which is not like too far, but I got to go out of my way, right? And the week that like both movies were playing, and I had a free schedule, there was like a fucking blizzard, so I didn't feel safe like trying to make it. So I'm real excited.
Yeah. I'm pretty pumped to see what you think of it. I'm really excited to revisit it. It's been on a movie that I've wanted to rewatch for a while now. I just haven't gotten around to it. So, hey, got a good reason to. let's talk about Cowboys and Aliens. And I think I'm going to start with just discussing the hybridization of science fictions and westerns, because we can start with western, blend into science fiction, and then that'll lead us straight into Harrison Ford and why he's an irredeemable piece of shit.
Let's go for it. Pop off, King. I'm letting you take the reins on this one because you watched it in much more detail than I did.
Honestly, as I'm saying that, like, either way, Harrison Ford is a central figure to this movie, and he should absolutely not be, because he's an irredeemable piece of shit. I know I just said that, it bears repeating that Harrison Ford's character in this movie is an irredeemable piece of shit.
Well, so do we want, I think this is actually a good note to, like, do we want to clarify what we mean when the movie starts off with potential? Because I feel like Harrison Ford is a prime example of this.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to talk about the potential in the beginning here, then please be my guest.
Sure, because, yeah, Sean's absolutely right. Harrison Ford's character is not only an irredeemable piece of shit, but also, like, a confused, like, poorly written, like, tonal and thematic mess of a character. Like, is like terrible character all around. And the thing is, I think that Harrison Ford actually has a strong introduction. There's some broad but, like, classic Western stuff that, like, you have, like, you know, the Stone Cold Daniel Craig. And, like, the thing about Daniel Craig is that, like, he's not the greatest actor in the world, but at his best, he can do goofy pretty well. And he can do, I think, like, if you go back and you watch Casino Royale, which is probably one of my favorite movies, honestly, like, Daniel Craig in that movie has almost this, like, primal, destructive, like, masculine anger about him that works really well for the kind of story that Casino Royale is telling. And I think they're kind of leaning into that here at the beginning, too. Like,
it would work really well in a Western, because Westerns, spoilers for what I'm about to talk about, are a lot about masculinity and destruction.
Yes, precisely. So, like, I thought we were leaning into some of, like, you know, Craig Bond at his best. And we get that a little bit. Like, there's some good fight scenes. There's some good, like, showdowns. He confronts Harrison Ford's, like, whiny, spoiled brat, like, rich kid son in town. And, like,
oh my God, it's Paul Dano playing that kid. And that kid's going to be goddamn Edward Nygma in the Robert Pattinson Batman movie. He's gonna be the Riddler.
That's actually perfect.
It is. No, it's great.
Oh my God. That's actually perfect.
I'm sorry, hang on. I need to pause for a second here, because we have not talked enough about the casting in this movie. I mentioned it briefly in the beginning, but there are three people that I want to talk about. I want to talk about Paul Dano, because absolutely Edward Nygma, great casting choice. The kid in this movie is Ong. And I said Ong, not Aang, because Aang is from Avatar: The Last Airbender. Ong is from The Last Airbender, M. Night Shyamalan's movie that eats so much ass. Just worth mentioning. Sam saw him and was like, I hate that kid, and it's not that kid's fault.
That poor kid. His career was over before it began.
And also, goddamn Clancy Brown was here again.
Clancy Brown is here.
Which, if you don't know who Clancy Brown is, he is fucking Mr. Krabs from SpongeBob, and he's goddamn Connor's opposite in Detroit Become Human. So Sam and I, every time he's out, just go, Connor, you damn android. Clancy Brown is ruined.
He's also the main prison guard in the Shawshank Redemption, which is already funny, pairing him with Mr. Krabs. So, like, you know, this is what an eclectic career that Clancy Brown has had.
He's also in The Ballad of Buster Scruggs, that Western movie from the Coen brothers, as another Western dude. Which, if you haven't watched The Ballad of Buster Scruggs, it's a bunch of vignettes. There's some really, really good ones, and there's some really okay ones, but you should absolutely check it out. But yeah, he was in that too. And again, as soon as we see him, Sam and I are just immediately yelling about Connor, because of course we are. Sorry, continue talking about Harrison Ford being an irredeemable piece of shit.
Sure. So, like, you know, I before we get to Harrison Ford, I guess, like, we're talking about the potential, like, you know, Daniel Craig works for this kind of part. Like, there's that element, like, he's kind of hearkening back to, like, the Clint Eastwood kind of character, except whereas Clint Eastwood is, like, there's still that brutality, but it's more, like, pulled back. Like, Daniel Craig, there's something a little more raw about him in terms of, like, his way that he plays action heroes compared to Clint. And, like, so that all works. Immediately ruined by the fact that, like, Amnesia is not a plot device like a Chappie, where I see it and immediately am repulsed. But you better start justifying it pretty quickly, and your revelations better not be boring as sin, which is what these are, which is that Daniel Craig has a dead wife.
Ooh.
That's it. That's all. Oh, and I guess he robs some trains and stuff so they could get out of like the life or whatever.
When it was revealed that Daniel Craig's wife was dead, originally like it's kind of presented like a raping.
And I was like, oh.
Yeah, no, my heckles were up. I'm like, oh god, oh no, this is, could be in very poor taste. But like when the movie started, I'm kind of like, okay, well, if this is treated as like a traditional Western, it could be kind of interesting in that regard or whatnot. Not excusing the act, but as a story driving element to it, it could do something there. Of course, it's Cowboys and Aliens, so it absolutely does not. But then we realize that, and it's clear that this was supposed to be what I hate the fact that it was like baiting the audience into thinking that that's what it is, and then just kidding, it was an alien like harvesting her organs before disintegrating her is so icky on so many levels that I'm not even going to get into, because that's just some fucking horse shit right there. But when it happened, Sam was like, "Is this what's going on?" I'm like, "No, she's getting her organs harvested," which I guess is better. And then we watch her get disintegrated, and Sam looks over and goes, "Yeah, cool motive, still a fridging." And I'm like, you know what? You're not wrong.
It's so fucking typical. It's so boring. It's so stupid. So I'm already mad about Daniel Craig's character, and especially because every line of dialogue out of his mouth, like, it's cool the first couple times when someone like asks him like, "Oh, where are you from, stranger?" He's like, I don't know, I don't remember. But that's kind of Daniel Craig's only line of fucking dialogue in this movie, so it gets old real fast.
And like when he originally shows up with Clancy Brown as a preacher, and Clancy Brown's like, are you a good guy, you a bad guy? I know good people who do bad things, bad people who do good things. I'm like, okay, this is a very much like the ethos of Western movies. The morality is gray, is a deep gray. And this is interesting, and like the idea of not knowing really plays into that idea of like who I am in the West. This is all interesting ideas in the space of Western movies. Also, fun fact that I did learn about myself in watching this movie, I apparently care about Westerns now. I never thought I did, but God damn it, apparently I do.
We've just watched enough on the show. I was right there with you, but we've done plenty of episodes on Westerns or Western adjacent things. We're fully invested here, boys. We love ourselves a good Western at beating a dead horse.
Which is wild. This show has been revelatory for me. I have learned so much about my movie taste through it.
So Daniel Craig, already pretty poor excuse for spaghetti Western hero. And then you have Harrison Ford, which like Harrison Ford's introduction scene, he's sort of played up as like the big bad, like corrupt, like capitalist controlling the town, like pretty classic archetype.
And in defiance of what makes beating a dead horse, that is not what makes him an irredeemable piece of shit.
No. Like, well, it's funny because like the beginning of the movie actually does play him this way. And like because there's the first time the aliens show up before their big attack on the town, when the movie seals the deal into being like a dull, like Sound and Fury, like
there's a man going poopy when it hits.
There's a man going poopy when it hits, and I'm fine with that. Oh, stinky. Capitalist daddy Harrison Ford comes back and he like hog ties him. Like this is his formal introduction. He like has him drawn and quartered basically. And it's really interesting for a minute because you're thinking like, oh, like wow, like, it's kind of hearkening back to like, the sort of irredeemable like villains of the old like Westerns, like I'm thinking like Angel Eyes. Like that's really interesting that like they're putting Harrison Ford, known for being like, even at like his morally grayest in his roles, like still pretty charming, that he's being kind of cast as like the Lee Van Cleef character. And like they could have gone with that, except as soon as the journey begins in earnest, he's just like a doddering old grandpa. Like, Sean's going to talk about in a minute, like, exactly what makes him such a piece of shit. Like, I completely agree. But, like, this was sort of like where I knew, or, like, where I started to, like, see where the movie was going. And that, like, it starts having him, like, even though he's like a racist, greedy, like corrupt asshole, like he's still like playing with the children and like regaling us with stories of like his sons and his adopted sons, and just acting like a goofy fucking grandpa. And I'm like, where's my Angel Eyes? Where's my Lee Van Cleef Harrison Ford? I want my villain. This sucks.
The fact that he is not a villain is really what makes him the irredeemable piece of shit in this movie, because they try and redeem him, which is, you know, paradoxically what damns him in a lot of ways. Because if he was played up to be an irredeemable piece of shit, he would be a really interesting, good, complex character. But because they take him from hog-tying this man and threatening to split him between two horses to, I have a bad relationship with my son, but I'm gonna fucking pack bond with this child I just met, I guess, and we're gonna go and I'm gonna redeem myself by telling stories of how I don't like fighting, despite the fact that I hogtied that guy, and killing is bad, and who am I again? What's my role here? And he slowly, almost imperceptibly, just like all the edges start to fall off him until he just turns into this fucking doughy mess of like, I'm a good old guy who don't worry about the horrible capitalist nightmare behind me and the racism and the wash of dead bodies and the blood, and also I encouraged a child to kill.
So to be clear here, because I completely agree with what Sean's saying, and that to get my daily dose in, you can write a like irredeemable piece of shit character and still give them some like depth and humanity. And like,
we talk about it every week when there's a good one.
Yep.
The best villains have some depth and humanity to it. Jesus Christ. Look, Anton Chigurh is fucking irredeemable piece of shit, but you can feel the humanity that exists underneath that black, dark, evil heart.
Even Dio, a literal cartoon character, has a bit of this, that you understand why he is the way he is, but he's also vampire Hitler.
Nazis fought Dio. That should tell you everything you need to know.
And like, so it's not necessarily that they give Harrison Ford like a couple of like human traits. It's that they do a 180, that they go from like, you know, complete corrupt piece of shit, and they don't like meaningfully explore his character or like the implications of like, you know, why he acts the way that he does in like a complex way that like integrates with what we know about, you know, society and how systems like support themselves and violence begets violence. Like, none of that. He just did a sad because he was in a war, so that means he's a shitty dad, but now he's not now. Hooray. Thrilling.
And it might sound like the way Jackson and I are talking about this, because I mentioned that like his edges sand off until he becomes this lumpy, doughy, friendly, ooh-woo dad. And Jackson's talking about how, you know, we don't really see that or anything like that. The problem is that there are no transitions. It just kind of happens. Yep. Like there are no character beats that shape this happening. It just like, as he's going along the trail, like they just fall off accidentally. And oh shit, there was a character trait back there that fell off. Should we go back and pick it up? Nah, just leave it. No one's actually paying attention to this movie. No one's gonna notice if Harrison Ford stops talking like that. So
it's not like you can't do this. It's not like you can't have like a realistic redemption arc for even like a huge piece of shit that feels earned. Granted, like, because this is a Western and because this deals with like the complicated history of like colonialism and, you know, racism and genocide against the Native Americans, that
we'll talk about.
Oh, we're gonna get there. Like that makes this, you know, more complicated to do than the example that I'm about to give, but it's not impossible. To, like, if you properly know your history and like can account for it and write your character in an intelligent way. But like, so thinking about again, and I keep using anime as an example on purpose this time, because even literal cartoons have more depth and nuance than Cowboys and Aliens does. But like, think about Vegeta, right? So when Vegeta shows up, he is like fuck, he doesn't even have like the shred of humanity that Dio does. Like Vegeta is just straight up like a complete monster. And yet like throughout the course of the series, we get to the point where like Vegeta does become a trusted friend and ally by the end of the series. By the end of this very, very long series, where lots of small, slow, imperceptible changes happen, and Vegeta does a lot of monstrous things and fucks up along the way. He doesn't just suddenly become Goku's best friend.
And in this movie, Harrison Ford just suddenly becomes good dad and goes, "Oh no, I made a mistake. I'm sorry. Here's a knife. Go stab an alien." So let's talk about alien stabbing, shall we?
Go for it, fam. Pop off.
If you're a fan of Westerns, you know that Westerns like dealing with masculinity and destruction and death. They don't always shy away from the idea of like, oh, you want to be a manly man and masculine and whatnot. But there is a sort of like awareness to the extent of which masculinity can damn people. Pride goeth before the fall, and masculinity is a form of pride in that way. They wrestle with how, masculinity shapes murder and murder shapes people, and generally comes down on the side of, hey, don't kill people, right? Like, that's just something that we can all agree on. Murder is bad. Cowboys and Aliens comes and asks, hey, what if those Westerns are actually about how murder is good? And if in True Grit, the movie ended with the celebration of the girl killing people? Because that's what that movie's about, right? Yeah? Great. Let's have this young boy kill an alien. Granted, yes, I know. You can make the argument of, oh, it's an alien. It's not an actual person. But this is a Western. Like the humanity is supposed onto the alien in this situation,
and it's a pretty disingenuous thing to say that like the aliens aren't supposed to like stand in for people at all when like they make the most like basic elementary school low IQ like colonialism allegory possible. Like, yes, we are supposed to be thinking about like, colonizers, people who are other people. Like, it's not a difficult jump to make.
No, it's not. And so, all right. So you want to know why this movie does not work on the science fiction level? What you do not know is I have cut out like 5 minutes of me staring at a wall thinking because I lost this. And the most reason is, and everything about this movie boils down to fucking Harrison Ford. I feel like it's worth mentioning just for legal reasons. I guess no one's going to actually sue us about this probably, but we're not actually talking about Harrison Ford. We're talking about his character.
Yes. So yes, we here at the Horsecast like to put in actor names for character names when we can't fucking be bothered to remember what the character's name was.
We rarely can remember what characters' names are, even in movies that we like, unless it's like Kubo and the Two Strings.
Right.
And the main character's name is Kubo. Anyway, Harrison Ford. The whole thing that's going on here is that in science fiction, as Jackson said, 7th grade level, aliens are the colonizers, white people colonizing, yada, yada, yada. The whole crux of it then boils down to the Native Americans forgive Harrison Ford, and then we blow up the colonizers? Like, what the fuck type of metaphor is that? That was my problem. Is like there is such a weird level. Like it's clearly supposed to be like, oh, the aliens look at humans as insects, and white people looked at Native Americans as less than as well. And then like the less than accepted the colonizers, and then the humans blew up the aliens.
You're absolutely right. It's such schlock. It's such trash.
Especially because that's like some weird fucking we white people forgive ourselves for our colonization, but we clearly think that colonizers should be destroyed. Okay. You got some mixed metaphors here, huh, guys? Huh, gang?
Sean, are you telling me that Cowboys and Aliens, written by the fine minds behind the amazing Spider-Man, is not intellectually equipped to handle the complexities of colonialism?
You know, they might not be. I hope I redeemed myself in some capacity after my fucking boneheaded conversation earlier on here. I lost the plot here, and I blame Cowboys and Aliens entirely.
I'm so glad you arrived at your point, because it's a good point. and I totally agree. It's so fucking stupid.
All right. I think in summary, fuck Cowboys and Aliens. It's a bad movie. It is bad in all the worst ways, in that it is just a fucking machine learning movie that is pointless and meaningless and just serviceable enough to be tolerable in a way that sucks. So
this is it. 10 chimps, 10 typewriters. This is what we get.
We didn't even talk about the fact that Olivia Wilde was an alien.
Olivia Wilde was an alien, and like, I mean, we could talk about that as far as like, Olivia Wilde is a fucking alien. What does that even mean in terms of like the colonialism allegory? Like, who does she represent?
So in the allegory, then, she would essentially be a Native American, which I think is why she was reborn in their fire, I suppose. I don't know. That feels disingenuous and wrong, and like I just gave it more thought than the writers did, which I'm sure I absolutely did, as to how that relates to anything else. It doesn't.
She's there because Daniel Craig is sad about his dead wife, okay?
And that sucks too, though.
This movie is trash.
No one, like, this is the type of thing where I'd be like, you know, no women in this movie have any real autonomy or anything interesting going on with them. And like, they're all there just to be props to like make everyone else feel better. But everyone in this movie is a prop to make everyone else feel better. It's garbage bad dookie.
Uh-oh, stinky. You could have replaced the whole podcast with that, and it would have been just as applicable.
Fuck, man. I can't believe we spent an hour talking about this goddamn movie. I can't believe that I actually stopped and stared at a wall to think about this movie and try and puzzle through my thought process on it. It did not deserve that.
Well, Sean, if it makes you feel any better, we will be the last people who ever talk about Cowboys and Aliens.
God willing, we will be. Please.
Not even our viewers will talk about Cowboys and Aliens, because our regular listeners will see we posted an episode about Cowboys and Aliens, go, what the fuck is Cowboys and Aliens, and skip.
Yeah.
So not even the cursed lineage ends here.
This is going to be our worst performing episode in months. And deservedly so, honestly. Good. Let this episode sink through the annals of time in the same way that the movie did. Fuck it.
There's nothing interesting about it. Like any sort of analysis we've been, trying to get at. I hope that us talking about it has illustrated what an incomprehensible, like, nonsense story this is, and also why it's an incomprehensible nonsense story in an uninteresting way, in a very like surface level boring way, not like a Tommy Wiseau Birdemic way, but just like, yes, these are the tropes, these are the racist tropes, these are the sexist tropes, these are the Western tropes, these are the sci-fi tropes. You put them all into the program.
Added just a huge dash of misunderstanding all of them.
Just spits this fucking garbage out.
I've been Sean McKinda. Find me on Twitter at Sean_McKinda.
I've been Jackson Keller. Find me on Twitter at Jackson J. Keller.
Find the podcast at BADH_cast, patreon.com/BADHcast. All monthly access to our Discord where you can talk to us about Cowboys and Aliens. Please do not do that. $5 monthly access to our Discord as well as our backlog of bonus episodes. $10 a month gets access to our backlog of bonus episodes, our Discord, as well as the ability to request bonus episodes. We still need a November episode, so please give us some suggestions. It also gets a little something.
Thank you so much, Julia, Travis, Pat, Mom, Aunt Summer. Y'all are great.
and none of you listen to this episode, so we are literally just shouting to the void right now. Thanks to Lords of High for use of our theme song and Suicide, alternate take off the album High Octane, Low Expectations, the Wonderful Band. You should go check them out. Also, thanks to my 5 years later site.com. There's a little button of us in the corner that you should go click on, but you should also go read the other stuff on the website. There's talented writers. Next week, we're going to be talking about Uncut Gems. It's a good movie. It's also arguably a penis joke in the title. So
Better than Cowboys and Aliens, which has Cowboys and Aliens in the title.
bye.
Don't you go into the ground. Don't you go